Cubs dropped the series against the Giants after winning Game 1 on Monday, but there are bigger fish to fry. Cubs got the Mets this weekend. Battle of two National League powerhouses. Dare I say the best teams in the National League. Let's talk about it today on the Cubs Daily Podcast. Cubs lose 3-1. Ben Brown, pretty good overall, I would say. Season high 9 strikeouts, 8 base runners, 3 earned across 5 innings. 100 pitches through 5 innings, so not super efficient. He allowed 1 run in the first inning and then 2 in the fourth. Bit of an Olay play by Justin Turner at first base allowed a few of those runs to score, but let's look ahead. So Jordan Wicks threw today at Iowa, looked better than he has all season. 5 innings, 5 base runners, 5 strikeouts on a bunch of whiffs. Chris Flexen through yesterday, that would be Tuesday in the 9th inning of a 5-3 game, Cubs and Giants at Wrigley. Only 12 pitches, but that's still an outing. And then Chris Flexen threw today on a back-to-back, 2 days in a row. You can read between the lines here. I think it's lining up that Cade Horton will pitch and make his major league debut in a huge game in New York against the Mets on Saturday. It would be the first Cub to make their MLB debut in New York since George Gerberman in 1962. Shout out Chris Antonacci, who's a Met fan, unfortunately, but works on our statistics side here in research and production for that nugget. Cade has a forcing fastball, sinker, sweeper. The sweeper is basically a big slider. You could call it a slider or sweeper, whatever you want. It's his out pitch to right-handed hitters. And then he also developed a changeup recently that's really blossomed into a pretty strong pitch for him. The sinker is a new pitch for him, helps him a bit versus right-handed hitters, establishing the inner third of the plate versus them. He's in a really good spot from a velocity and shape standpoint. Last season, he took a big hit in terms of his stuff, ended up going down with a subscap injury, only pitching about 34 innings. And I just don't think much of the industry's caught back up to how good he's been this year. In prospecting, there's this thing called there's no such thing as a pitching prospect, which is kind of a tongue-in-cheek way to accept the injury risk that comes with pitchers. And often what you see is guys get hurt and then get downgraded on national prospect lists. You go back to 2023 and Cade was a consensus top 3 or 4 pitching prospect in all of baseball. Last year, he kind of fell out of the top 10 of sorts, depending on the list you look at. And now, again, because these lists come out preseason, you don't really get the midseason adjustment that allows you to contextualize how good he's been. And again, I'm not guaranteeing Cade will debut Saturday. It's just, from my perspective, this is how it's lining up. Now, Flexen is probably still some kind of option Saturday, despite the fact that he just threw a back-to-back. I can imagine you give him the next 2 days off and he's fine to pitch in some form or another on Saturday. But to expect him to go 5 or 6 innings, I think, as a true starter is probably unlikely. And that, to me, is why I'm leaning on the side of confidence that it's Cade Horton. As I record this on Wednesday, May 7th at about 4:30 p.m., that is my stance, that it will be Cade. A cheeky thing they could do is to opener Flexen and not allow Cade to potentially turn over and face guys like Lindor and Soto and Alonso 3 times, and you could put him in the game, maybe pitch him into the 6th inning. It's just off the bat. Flexen helps in abbreviating and mitigating some of the damage that those big bats could create. But I don't know, that's kind of the way you set him up for success, but there's also the angle that he's your top pitching prospect, and I don't know, I would want to instill confidence in my top pitching prospect by saying, hey, we're confident with you going out there and facing 2 MVP candidates, 3 MVP candidates in a row, sink or swim. This dude has pitched on the biggest stage in the College World Series. He's got it in his blood. I think he's a low heartbeat guy. I'm very excited to hopefully see him this Saturday. And if you're looking for more on Cade, I have about 8 minutes where I go in depth. Hop back to the April 30th Cubs Daily podcast called Can Cade Horton Make the Cubs Even Better? Spoiler alert, yes he can. Now it's time to preview a huge Mets series, 2 clubs that are growing in their probability of hanging around late into the postseason. Very excited for this one. It's going to be probably the matchup of the year. And yeah, I know I said that when the Dodgers were in town, but listen, I think the Mets are playing equally as good as the Dodgers, and their pitching is just unreal. But let's start with the offense. The Mets offense has one of the lowest strikeout rates in baseball at 19%. The Cubs actually have the 7th lowest at just over 20%. Mets and Cubs are also both 5th and 6th in the league in terms of walk rate. So both these teams are doing a very good job from a swing decisions standpoint. Swing in the zone where you could do damage. Don't chase outside of the zone, where the league slugging percentage this season is .204 entering today's games. Yeah, that's not good. This is why you do not chase, and some of the best hitters in baseball drive high on base percentages. Pete Alonso is the guy here to watch. He's cut his strikeout rate from 25% last year, and historically right around that rate for him, down to 15% this season. And he's currently up there in terms of NL MVP odds, right next to Shohei Ohtani, Kyle Tucker, of course, and Fernando Tatis Jr. He has destroyed the Cubs in his career. He has 15 home runs against the Cubs, which is as many as he's had against the Atlanta Braves, a team that he plays way more frequently. Alonso has started 87 games against the Braves and just 37 against the Cubs, and he has the same home run total. So how do you pitch to him? Well, number one, good luck. If you look at 2023 and 2024 for Alonso, a lot of his damage comes middle away to down away, so he's really good at covering the outer third of the plate. And this year, that damage is mostly kind of up, down, in. And to be frank, as I look at his heat map, he's kind of just covering everything all over the zone. Four-seamer sliders, changeups, cutters, etc. If you really want to nitpick here, like give me Jameson Taillon and put me on the mound against Alonso and MLB The Show or something, the things I'd stay away from for the most part are sinkers and sweepers, because he's creating a ton of expected damage all over the zone on these shapes in particular, especially low in the zone, no matter where they're thrown, but that concentration, again, covering the outer third has been really good. And versus four-seamers, there's actually a bit of miss that you can get up and inside versus him, which is perhaps a bit different than prior season. So this kind of works with Jameson Taillon's new approach, who's pitching on Friday, to go heavy on the four-seam fastball to right-handed hitters that he's kind of embraced this year, backing off his sinker a bit. As for the breaking ball to use to kind of put him away, I know Taillon is more of like a sweeper guy, going away to right-handed hitters, trying to elicit some chase. But I kind of wonder whether he's willing to take some risk versus Alonso, who's just covering any kind of sweep away and move back towards the four-seam up in 2 strike counts. Also kind of like the wrinkle of maybe going cutters up away to Alonso, something that he just doesn't see a lot, change the look. It's scary to suggest a bunch of fastballs versus Pete Alonso, but maybe, just maybe, this is the approach that could work. From a pitching standpoint, I'm going to go back into prediction mode here because the starters aren't officially announced. Friday's lining up to be Jameson Taillon versus Clay Holmes. Holmes is a converted starting pitcher that the Mets have done a really good job with. His advantage as a pitcher is that he's got a sinker with a really steep approach into the zone because he's a really big dude thrown from a high slot, but he's also able to kill a lot of vertical break on his sinker and allow that ball to kind of get pounded into the ground. He's really hard to lift overall. Historically, he's had a very low barrel rate. So against him, I don't know if it's a game where the Cubs kind of outslug the Mets. It seems to me more like an angle where you try to get ball in play, really embrace the guys like Nico Horner and Seiya Suzuki, and even like an Ian Happ this year have been really good from a ball and play standpoint. Holmes has actually gone the most batters this season in MLB without allowing a home run, courtesy of MLB Network's X account I saw that from. We'll see if the Cubs could change that. When you go to Saturday, it will be Tyler Megill of the Mets, who has a 2.5 ERA and 7 starts with peripherals that back it up. He's not really allowing any barrels, kind of adjusted his slider into more of a downer pitch, really throwing it hard. Just deep mix, big extension, big dude, weird look. He's a really tough pitcher to get to. The Cubs are obviously still to be determined in terms of Saturday, as we were talking about earlier in this podcast. Sunday is likely to be Matthew Boyd versus Griffin Canning, yet another strong starter for the Mets, who tweaked some things with Canning. He had a 5+ ERA with the Angels last year. They've turned him into a legit starting pitcher after being one of the worst, honestly, if you sort just based on ERA in 2024 for Canning last season. He's using his sliders as primary pitch to righties. That's changed from prior seasons. He's changed up his location to lefties on his fastball and his slider. He had a 5.19 with the Angels last year, and he's got a 2.5 this year with the Mets in 7 starts. His peripherals aren't as strong as Megill's, but it's still an above-average arm. I think this is probably the guy that they can get to of the 3 we're talking about here. So if you're ranking my Cubs offense confidence against some of these pitchers, Canning is the guy I think they could get to, followed by Megill, and then followed by Holmes, who I just think is really tough to barrel. And you may be wondering, how on earth do they have this strong of a pitching staff on their peripheral, basically 4th and 5th starters, aside from guys like Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea, who are hurt? Yeah, the Mets are pretty good at pitching development. Their staff right now is 2nd best ERA in baseball. They've really turned things around. You could argue, to some extent, this is the toughest stretch of 3 games from a pitching standpoint that the Cubs have faced all season coming up. And yeah, I know they went through San Diego and Arizona and the Dodgers, but Yamamoto with the Dodgers is really the only starter who looks amazing for them right now. Corbin Burns was down for Arizona. Glasnow went for the Dodgers versus the Cubs. But again, shortly after seeing the Cubs, he went down with injury, so how healthy was he facing the Cubs? These 3 starters the Mets are rolling out are pretty stellar, and they're not household names, so let's see what wins here. The unstoppable force that is the Cubs offense, or the immovable object that is the Mets pitching staff. The game's on Marquee Sports Network on Friday, 5 p.m. pregame, 6:10 Central Time. First pitch, Cubs and the Mets. Big series in the Big Apple. I'm very excited for it, and I hope you enjoy it. Enjoy your off day on Thursday. We have a Road to Wrigley starting at 6 p.m. Central Time. if you're interested in catching some minor league ball, we will be seeing the Iowa Cubs for the first time on road to Wrigley, which I'm very excited for. We haven't on the prior 2 games due to rainouts and some other scheduling things where they played earlier in the day and we were still going. So that lineup is loaded. So we're going to dig into that with myself, Elise Menaker, and Jim Callis. Feel free to tune in. Marquee Sports Network and the Marquee Sports Network app. As always, we have you covered. Take care.